supervisor and I'm in your office and your wife calls because there's some emergency and you just let it go to voicemail, but you knew it was an emergency, I'm not going to do business with you because I don't think you have integrity. If I, as a customer, are more important than your family in an emergency, I am not interested in doing business with you.
That's a great illustration. Great illustration. So let's just talk about some takeaways. You know, my audience is very eclectic. I have millennials, people that are starting out in their careers, either as employees or self-employed, all the way up to folks that have been retired for a number of years and they're living the retirement lifestyle that they always dreamed of, hopefully. So what are some takeaways? Can you talk a little bit about things that people could do simply day in and day out to try and improve one or more of these known, liked, and trusted? Well, what are some things that we could do without changing everything we're doing day in and day out, but just some simple adjustments that might be effective? Do you have anything?
Oh, so absolutely. So let me get, so my audience are people who are in business today, but let me get the retired. So let me give you something for the retirement community. Okay. So if you're retired, one of the things you've probably figured out now is how cool FaceTime is or Skype or Zoom so that you can communicate with your grandkids. If you haven't, you absolutely should. And one of the best things you could possibly do is ask one of your grandkids who you really like to, and it's a joint relationship, whether or not you could mentor each other, right? So it's the younger generation sort of teaching you how to use that computer, use it effectively, and how to communicate. It's so amazing when I look at my mom, who is speaking to her grandchildren almost every day, and at least once a week they're FaceTiming, and it's just, she is so involved with their lives, and they kind of like it, and it's very cool, and it goes both ways. When appropriate, the older generation can be a mentor, but also approach that situation as a mentee, and trust me, you'll be so much more rewarded in life for that.
I love that. Love it.
So let's talk about anyone in business today. So first, I'm going to give you one quick thing, and then I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about books. So the quick thing is, if you think you can get through life without truly being involved with the internet and social media, truthfully, you really have something coming, because we now live in a world where this younger generation is absolutely interested in doing things quickly. Everyone has some form of Yelp score against them, and it's against them or for them. So if you show up well, if you've done good things in the know, like, and trust, when somebody actually Googles your name, they're going to see that. And in many, many cases, you won't even see your prospects if you're not presented well online. And that doesn't mean you have to hire people and spend a ton of money doing social media. It just means that the person who you are is represented well. If you're listening right now, just Google your name and see what comes up. And if you're not in the first page of results and you're not presented well, and that's not the person who you say you are or you think you are, well, you got a little bit of work to do. Not necessarily a lot of work, but a little bit of work. And it's important that you're presented well online. And doing shows like this, podcasts, whether it's audio or video or both, is and are a interesting way to get your brand out there. Can I talk just a little bit about books just for a second?
Yeah, fire away.
So here's what I know and what I do that's different. And that is, as part of the know component, really, if people do business with those they know, like, and trust, how do you get known? One of the things you could do to prove that you're an expert in a space is you could spend, a couple $100K and 3 years of your life and get a PhD. And by definition, if somebody has a PhD, we assume that person has expertise in the area they have. A much easier way to demonstrate you have expertise is to have a book. And so we've published over 800 books, and I have a book. I've got it in my hand. It's 100,000 words. Took the authors 3 years to write. I mean, not the same as a PhD, but painful in terms of time.
Yeah.
But their audience are engineers. And that engineering audience needs to see those detailed facts and those tables and those graphs and all of that. And that's what they felt they needed to be able to close 6- and 7-figure deals, and they have been successfully since the book has been published. But for those who just need to communicate that they have expertise in an area, I have found the easy button. And the easy button is the way, if you think about how we consume data today, we have so much bits of information coming after us. What do we do? Who do we like? The concept of having a 30-second elevator pitch. Remember those old days where you would be taught how to do your 30-second elevator pitch?
Yes.
Today I think it's 7 seconds. Right? If you do the right 7 seconds, someone will then give you a 30. If you do the right 30, then you get 5 minutes. Right? So what we've done is we've recrafted what a book is, and our books in the Aha That series, and you can see all the books under the publishing brand Think Aha. So in our Aha That series, our books are comprised of 140 bite-sized quotes and 7 blog posts. So they're also consumable. When you hand somebody one of your books and you do a personal autograph of that, they open it up and they're seeing these words of wisdom that are already digestible. Like in the old days, you had to put a bunch of fluff in there because the publishers wanted to be able to sell the quality of you as the thought leader. And the printers needed to make sure there was enough paper in there so they made money on the print jobs. Nowadays, if you want to be consumed, you should make a book that's comprised of consumable chunks. So I'll give you an example. In my book, Being Seen and Being Heard as a Thought Leader, Aha number 4 is something that's super powerful. And by the way, having listened to you, this is something you demonstrate. But let me tell you what Aha number 4 says. And by the way, just so you know, that particular one, when I wrote my book, I interviewed 4 other thought leaders. So 80% of the content of the book is from other people. And I want to give you a quote from Robert Clancy, who has 500,000 followers on Facebook. I also got the guy who runs thought leadership for Cisco, and I've got a real live Swami in my book. But what Robert says, and this is Aha number 4, is that good thought leaders are at the top of the mountain. Great thought leaders are at the bottom of the mountain, helping others climb up.
Wow.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah, that's terrific.
So if you have a book that has 140 of those, a prospect who's looking at you only needs to read a couple to go, oh, I kind of like this guy. I think I know this person a little bit more because you're learning from what they're saying. Let me talk to them. Because it's really the conversation that's going to be the one in which you then close the business, close the deal. So if that's the case, what I'll make the next step forward, we have a process where we actually interview the expert, and we interview them for 2 hours. So I will do that interview, and I will pull the genius from their head, and then I've got a team of writers who I've sent through writing school who will write the seven blog posts and 140 aha messages. And the total time that an author will spend on one of their books is about 5 hours. So let me compare that for a second, and then I'm going to make the boldest statement I've made on the show.
Oh, I can't wait.
If somebody writes a book themselves, it's about a 120-page book, about 25,000 words. It'll take about 120 hours. Having published 800 books, I've got a good feeling of that. So if you write a 120-page book, it'll take you 120 hours. If you decide to publish it yourself, we save the author about 200 hours in the places we distribute and what we do. So that's 320 hours. So you know very well about the time value of money and the value of time. And that is, so imagine spending 320 hours writing and publishing your own book or spending 5. And if you spent 5 hours, now imagine taking that differential, 315 hours, with a Amazon best-selling book. That's one of the things we do as well. We help people become Amazon best-selling authors. So you take 315 hours with an Amazon best-selling book, and then you market yourself. Instead of wasting your time writing and publishing a book, you market yourself with your Amazon best-selling book, and imagine what your business will be like.
Yeah.
So my bold statement is simply saying if you're in business today, unless your business is as a writer, you should not waste your time writing and publishing a book.
Very good. I like that a lot. And actually, that's decent advice from me. And I actually was an English major. My degree is in English, believe it or not, and a minor in history, not finance, unbelievably. And so I've long aspired to write a book. But then again, I've never written it, so you got to question whether that's really just a goal or a fantasy. But I think you're speaking to me because with my 26 years of experience and with my practice, Mitchell, growing and thriving tremendously, especially these last couple of years, we've gotten clients all over the United States, not just Connecticut and Florida. And I think a book would do wonders for me and my business and another way to express myself to clients and potentially new clients who could learn more about me, my philosophies. And so you're really speaking to me on that subject. In fact, we talked before we started recording today. That's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. It's another way that my clients, I may meet with a client, let's say twice a year, and it could be in person or it could be via a webinar, kind of a digital relationship. But let's say I meet with a client twice a year to review their accounts and their portfolio and their financial plan. If they buy into the podcast, I say buy in, it's free, the podcast. But if they listen to it on a regular basis, the one that we published today was, I think, about 12 minutes long. Last week's was 15 minutes. It's a way that they could hear me speak about various topics, including current events in the markets and the economy. And not only will they learn something, learn a little bit about what my thoughts are, but they actually get to know me to a much greater degree. And I think that increases all the things you talk about. It makes me more known. It will make me more likable. And it will add trust because I will be speaking to them for a few minutes, hopefully every week as they tune in.
You are spot on.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, that's it. I was actually going to make that same conclusion, but you did it, so I'm really glad you did, because not only is the know, like, and trust important, but now it's the referability, right? I mean, you compared to somebody else. If somebody wants to recommend, let's say they recommend you to one of their friends. We'll just say their grandfather passed away, and who do I go to? And they recommend you, and the person says, well, I know this other person. Well, they might say, well, this guy has a podcast, and he talks to me every week. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's a big advantage, and then also that person being referred may very well check out my social media. They'll check out my website, but they can listen to a podcast or two or three or as many as they are inclined to, and by the time they listen to a few, they're going to know an awful lot about me personally, as well as my philosophies and rules on money and take on current events and historical perspectives. And I think that's valuable from the business perspective. What's good about that, Mitchell, also is that if then at that point they agree to meet with me, we're probably a good match even before we sat down, which saves both parties time, energy, and money.
Oh, I can't agree with you more. And I have this thing in my life, having done the TED Talk, the conversations I have with prospects who see the TED Talk, and I just did this in November, it came out in January this year, the conversations I have with prospects, if they see the TED Talk before I talk to them, they're actually quoting me from my TED Talk. It's pretty cool, actually.
Oh, yeah. And you and I only spoke a little bit before recording the show, but I had watched your TED Talk. Paul Matthews, who works with me, had watched it, and it helped me prepare for today's discussion. So I knew so much about you, and it's different than reading a resume, reading a bio. Being able to hear you and see you really captures what we talked about in the known, liked, and trusted phrase, because I felt that way about you just from watching your TED Talk and the other collateral materials you had provided Paul and I in preparation for that. So you're a living example of how to make the most out of what you're doing. So that's really great.
Well, by the way, thanks for saying that, because